Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Intel. It is time for another update, and on this chart we have been tracking a few ideas on the larger time frame, and primarily we have been focusing even more on the idea of a potential series of 1-2 setups, with even this being a wave 1 up instead and have this as a wave 2 correction. But we have decided to leave this interpretation on the chart, at least for now, until we get first some more evidence that something more bullish would be going on, but secondly until we need to shift that interpretation, because this is a simpler structure to comprehend. This is a simpler structure to track, and in either case, we would be looking to form an impulse within this area, whether it is a wave 5, whether it is a larger wave 3, and even so, we are focusing more specifically on the internal structure, where we have managed to create an initial 5-wave move to the upside in a wave 1, and we had our 3-wave correction in a wave 2 perfectly into the last level of support at the $17.6 level. Now, the ideal target for the wave 3, I have provided this to you in so many videos already, but I believe it is important to visualize what is the minimum expectation to track this entire count to the upside, and this is the 138.2% extension of the wave 1 at the $196 level. If we fail to reach this level within the wave 3, we would have difficulties tracking a follow-up wave 4 correction and continuation to even higher prices within a 5th wave afterwards. It would not be a reliable structure to track for continuation to higher prices if we fail to build our wave 3 into this level. Now, if this really is within the interpretation that we are tracking as a 1-2 setup within this area, I would strongly expect it to far exceed this idea, to far exceed those levels, but I would need to see some evidence first, because currently we are still within the early stages even of this wave 3 to the upside. Now, before we move into the structure, the internal count, and my expectations for this pattern, I wanted to briefly mention the channel newsletter. You can find the link for that in the description, and you will get access to our monthly top picks. It is completely free, but if you do enjoy the content and you want to support the channel directly, you can check out the channel membership. The link is in the description as well, or you can click the join button and you get access to a couple of cool perks as well, including additional content. Yeah, you get extra content that I cannot even post on the channel because some stocks, some assets don't really perform and it hurts the algorithm. Now, back to the chart. Here, within this wave 3, we have been looking for the initial wave 1 to the upside. We have already had our initial wave 1 up, we had our wave 2 correction. This was the first degree of confirmation, but now we are looking for the second degree, the next 1-2 setup. This would allow us to look with very, very high probabilities for the area of support for continuation to higher prices. We will have here an area of support for continuation to higher prices for a correction in wave 2, and it will provide us an even earlier signal, if it is to get broken, that even this 1-2 setup would eventually fail. Now, at this point, I am even able to consider this initial 5-wave move to the upside complete. We might be looking at our next level of confirmation coming here very, very soon. We only need to reach the area of support between the $35.5 all the way down to the $22.5. If you remember, in this area, while we were pushing to higher prices, we highlighted an area of resistance that would signal to us a more direct breakout could occur, but it would also signal to us that it is more likely to get the breakout. Now, we have already broken this area of resistance. We have a 1-2 setup and we have our additional wave 1 to the upside, and we were looking at the $51.8. It wasn't a sustained break, but it is enough to hint at this structure managing to break through at the next attempt, especially if this is to form a wave 3 to the upside. Now, for continuation to higher prices, we could be looking for this to still form an extension, but personally I am more inclined to believe we would have already a wave 1 top in place, and that we would be looking for the follow-up wave 2 correction into the area that extends all the way down to the 78.6% retracement at the $22.5 level. We are tracking this in yellow not because it is a different interpretation than the blue structure, the blue scenario, but because it is more visible to track, and I did want to highlight the confluence it has with the larger area of support. So, if we are to consider that we would have this initial 5-wave move to the upside, we would be looking at such an area of support as an accumulation zone. It would be forming its first level of confirmation as it heads lower and lower into it, but it does so within a 3-wave pattern. Well, right now we already have the confirmation. We have the 1-2 setup. We have formed a wave 1 up and a wave 2 down, and we have formed the reversal. We are now looking at the second level of confirmation, and it is still within the larger accumulation area, the initial accumulation area. You will have all the opportunities that we have had within the initial wave 2 correction in the blue scenario, once again with even higher probabilities. Now, sure, we don't expect to push into the 78.6% retracement at the $17.6 level or even near that area again, but it does have a much higher degree of probabilities to actually work out. It provides an earlier signal that this structure is going to fail, so if we break below the $22.5 level, it is strongly indicating to us that this 1-2 setup is not going to work out. But as of now, we see the current market conditions and it is struggling to even reach the area of support we have been tracking. Now, I don't want to rule out a possible extension even within this fifth wave, but I also don't want to focus on it. In the previous video, we have been tracking some idea for a possible extension in a 5-wave pattern in this area. We have the area of support extending all the way down to the $41.4 level. And really, it's not an area of support that I would consider a trade setup because we are within a full pattern that has formed here. We don't need the additional extension to higher prices. In fact, if we do form this green interpretation, I would need to consider an even stronger extension to the upside. I would not be able to look afterwards for a 1-2 setup. And even other extensions are possible, but this is for me more of a level to watch as an indication that the probabilities for a descent in the wave 2 area of support would increase even further. Now, in the previous video, we have been tracking a couple of ideas in the even smaller time frame here. And let me actually remove this just to increase the visibility. And in the previous video, we have been looking at a potential initial 5-wave move to the upside. It wasn't necessarily the prettiest structure. We were looking for the area of support in green down to the $43.7 level for potential continuation to higher prices. We have gotten that, but we are still bound by the area of resistance. We even have an initial 5-wave move to the downside within this area, and to me it is still strongly suggested that we should expect to continue to lower prices. We would still need to see a break above the $51.7 level for a stronger signal that a substantial bottom would be in place here and that a next wave to the upside may occur. This has not happened, and we have pushed in a 3-wave pattern nearly into the last level of resistance. So right now, I would consider this pattern to the upside in a wave 2 even more complete, and I would be looking for the next wave potentially in a wave 3, but to be honest, based on the developments within this area, it seems much more likely to me to form this within an ABC structure. I'm not disregarding the area of support that would allow extensions to higher prices, but I'm just focused on a more direct descent. And you may be wondering, why am I not tracking a wave 3 within this area anymore? Well, while it is not impossible, I would first need to form this as a 5-wave move to the downside in a leading diagonal, because this is not forming an impulse. Since I have this initial structure to the downside as a 5-wave pattern, I would expect after a 3-wave correction, if this is to form a wave 3, to form an impulse. Since we are only seeing a corrective structure within this area in this potential wave 1, I can really only look for a wave 1 to form within this area, have a wave 2 correction, and then, sure, a wave 3, but then this wave 1 would need to unfold as a leading diagonal, and at the same time, it could be that this is just a wave C as an ending diagonal. So I don't want to assume too much. We don't need to build an impulse to the downside. In fact, if we do build an impulse, we would expect after completing the entire 5-wave move to the downside to get a 3-wave correction and then another 5-wave move to the downside. Yeah, this is basically what we are expecting within this smaller time frame, in an A, B, C structure. Now, with that said, we can focus more on the internal structure. And if we want to look for some area of support for potential continuation to higher prices, I could be watching here the levels between the $47.7 all the way down to the $44.1. Below the 78.6% retracement would be even an additional signal that this structure is going to not manage to hold in, who knows, a potential 1-2 setup in this area or something like that. I'm not necessarily completely ruling out the possibility of this being an initial 5-wave move to the upside. It's just extremely unlikely to me because within this correction we have fallen below the 50% retracement. It's not a reliable wave 4. So I want to be flexible, but to be realistic, I don't really trust this pattern for continuation to higher prices. Now, in this structure to the downside, I'm tracking this as a 1, 2, 3rd, 4th, and a 5th. Within this pattern, in the wave 3, I'm looking for something like an A, B, C structure to unfold. We need to remain highly flexible within this area. The structure is very corrective and it will be very unpredictable. But in my opinion, within this wave 3, we have here an A, B, C pattern within a wave A. And I'm looking at this as a potential wave B and a C wave to extend to even lower prices. Now, within this wave C, I am looking even at the potential impulse to form within this area as a double 1-2-1-2 setup. And in this case, for resistance, I would focus mainly on the levels between the $47.3 all the way up to the $48.4. This structure to the downside might already be complete, and in this case, I would be watching these levels of resistance for continuation to lower prices. And even though I cannot rule a different count working out within this area, and this could be instead a wave 1 down in an ABC structure in a zigzag. And then we would need to still look for the next levels of resistance. And this isn't going to be a clear area where we will have a clearly defined level where we won't be able to look for resistance. Yeah, I suppose we could be looking at these previous swing highs as the most important probably. And the break above the $49 level would completely invalidate the idea of a potential 1-2 setup. And then a break above the, the $49.5 level, this swing high would signal to us that a more substantial bottom could even be expected to be in place within this area. Now, once again, I wouldn't focus too much on the structures. The main area of resistance remains here up to the $51.7 level. I would suggest that you zoom out. And if we want, we can look for a new ideal target for this wave to the downside, assuming it is a wave C. And yeah, we can also look for it if we can track it as a wave 3, if it forms after all an impulse. And for that, we would be watching here the levels at the 100% extension of the wave A, the $40 level, for this to be a wave C. And if this is to unfold as the wave 3, I would be watching the 138.2% extension of the wave 1 at the $36.2 level. Although, once again, if this is to form a wave 3 within this area, we would still need to form an initial 5-wave move to the downside. We would still need to unfold what is expected to be here within this wave C. And by the way, we can even look for an ideal target for this internal wave 3 to the downside, and it is at the $45 level. Now, for a quick recap, we are looking for a potential extension to higher prices only if we break the $51.7 level. The pattern isn't suggesting this to be a high probability. In fact, we are still looking here at an initial 5-wave move to the downside, which is suggesting at least another 5-wave move to the downside. Below the $44 level, we would be looking for this structure to extend even more likely in this wave C in yellow. And if we break even below the 61.8% retracement within the larger time frame at the $41.5 level, it is even more likely to extend into our yellow area of support. And as a last piece of information before we end this video, I'm looking at this as a high priority accumulation area. I'm looking for this to possibly not form a deep retracement. We have formed a similar structure on the Micron technology chart. We didn't get into the area of support. And while I do prefer the probabilities of reaching this area of support, I would not have strong expectations for a deep retracement, to be honest. But for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.